couple things going on here. Hope everybody's doing well today. We're going to have Burton Young from Barracuda Cast Nets on in just a second. And we're going to find out everything that's happening with him. I've always wanted to know the story about how he got this company started. I like all kinds of stories about how somebody gets something started, and especially in the world of cast nets. Like, seems pretty competitive. There's a lot of cast nets out there. So wonder what his story is about how he felt like he was going to do something better. Ooh, doo-doo fish at home with a kidney stone. Needs some happiness in my life. Well, everybody give him a wave. Hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. That would not be good. Want to get on the water. Yeah, everybody wants to get on the water, and I believe that it's happening. I believe that things are loosening up. We're starting to see some data come out that coronavirus dies in the sunshine very quickly, and hopefully that information will trickle down, and we will be able to get the parks open, the public spaces open, the boat ramps, the marinas. That's what we need. Fishing is the ultimate social distancing protocol, right? Nobody wants to go fishing right next to somebody else. We want to be way away from everybody. In fact, that's the best. That's the best, in my opinion, to be way away from everybody. Nowhere close. So fishing is the way to go as far as social distancing. Okay. I guess we could say hi to everybody before we get Burton on here. Hayden Rowland, what's up? All right, everybody's has loud and clear. That's good to know. Real good. All right, so looking for how to get Burton on here, but he'll be on here in just a second. Does everybody, did anybody watch the live podcast with Cameron Kirkconnell? And if so, do you have any suggestions about live podcasts? Is it good? I like the live because it gives people an opportunity to ask questions and talk to the guests a little bit. But these will also be put out as normal on iTunes. Burton just texted me, can't find a place to join. Okay. Let's see here. Hang on a second. Everybody hold on just a second. We're going to get Burton on here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whoops, not that. Okay. Let's see if that helps. I sent him an invitation. I'm going to try to do this too. So let's see what happens. Try over here. Send him a text over here. Got a lot of stuff going on. Oh, there it is. Boom. Okay. Go live with Barracuda. Now we are cooking. I believe we are going to have him on here in just 1 second. There he is, right on. Now we're cooking.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good.
Good deal. Well, thanks for doing this. We've already got a number of people on here, and
I see that.
Everybody wants to know the Barracuda story. I want to know the Barracuda story. How long you had
Awesome.
Barracuda?
Barracuda, we've been around for about 3.5 years now. It started off back in 1923. Jack Reynolds started the company, and the Reynolds family and my family is close together. So when I started having the idea to build a cast net company. I called some of the rentals and asked them if I could use the name, and they gave me rights to everything. And now Barracuda's back in business again. They
Right
went out of
on.
business in '74. I think 23 to '74. They were the largest tackle manufacturer in the Southeast U.S. So they have a history. So,
Yeah. And what all did they manufacture? Was it all
um,
types of tackle or what?
lures. If you ever look at their catalogs, you'll find rods and reels and a number of different things. But mainly they were kind of known for their lures. The Dalton Special. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was a top water plug that would be used for bass back in the day.
Okay.
Uh,
Uh-oh. Having a little bit of
that was
internet,
one of
little bit of
there.
internet issues, but you're back.
Okay. Yeah, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. Um, yeah, they're mainly known for lures. That was kind of their big thing.
Okay. And so what did you do before Barracuda?
I actually owned an IT company. I'm actually a Microsoft engineer and a Cisco networking professional, and I was in medical IT services for a long time. I used to do medical software, electronic medical records, and practice management. Boring stuff that most people in fishing don't really care about, right?
Well, it's kind of boring, but with the where we are today, I mean, it's becoming more and more popular. It's really weird with the coronavirus and what's happening with the lockdown and everything that some of the things that seem so boring are now so important to our lives.
Important.
Tech is one of them. I
Yep.
think that I'd like to know what your forecast is like with things like this, Zoom calls, live Instagram, all of this. I seem to think that it's going to explode, and there's going to be a lot of technology, a lot of innovation going into
Yep.
these type of things where you can communicate with somebody at a distance.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be the way the world moves in the future. I think this brought it to light that a little bit of distance would be good in everybody's lives. Whether and that's everybody having to go this route and having to work from home and having to go to all these steps of initiating it. It's just going to start the ball rolling, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it out there where people are going to be working from home. There's going to be the distance, there's going to be the meetings. Outdoor sports are definitely taking off in a way right now that it's unprecedented. You can't buy a bicycle. Fishing tackle it's a booming business right now. I look at we had an amazing April as a fishing tackle manufacturer, and that's we didn't expect it, but it just shows that everybody social distance. They're getting on the water, they're going on bikes, they're going out to the parks, they're spending more time as a family. Honestly, there's a lot of negatives that come out of it. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's some positives I'll probably spin out of this as well.
Well, of course, I always try to look at the silver lining of anything, but there have been some very obvious positives, and it's funny how, well, it's not funny for the people that are suffering at all, but
Yeah.
it's interesting how some companies will really benefit from this, and usually, from what I've seen and noticed, it's in a way that we're not expecting. Like
Yep.
somebody that makes face masks, like Buff, all of a sudden they just start
Oh,
selling
they're
everything
out.
they've got, like
They have no stock.
nothing. It's all gone, or
Yep.
Hook is selling all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, and that was completely unexpected, and they're having the best you know month they've ever
It's
had. But then
yep.
others
It's
are really, really, really suffering.
I mean, the restaurants, all the hospitality workers, all the fishing guides. I mean, tackle is selling better, I think, right now. The tackle sales are up, but the fishing guides are, I mean, they're especially where you are in the Keys, well,
Right.
where you are part time in the Keys. I mean, I was down there last week. There's no work for the guides. There's no anything,
Well,
which
there
is
could
kind
be
of
work if it was open. I think people would
yep,
be going, but it's a really weird time. Kind of. I mean, we see it in the Keys, on a regular basis, to where they will close the Keys down because of a hurricane, or
yep.
usually because of a hurricane. It's like, okay, residents only. We need to fix the problem that we're having. No one else is allowed. But that's a very, very temporary thing. It usually lasts for a week,
They
maybe.
fix it and get back to it. Yeah,
Yeah, and
this is going on 2 months. They just announced last week their closure for another month.
I know.
And it's unbelievable because the guides are out of work. And I mean, I don't think what a lot of people understand is that at this time of year, the guides going into February, spending all their money on their boats and their equipment and everything else to make it through March, April, May, when you guys have the busiest time of year. So they spend a lot during that time, and then automatically they were shut down. And I just friends of mine
We lost you a little
Definitely,
bit.
it's definitely not good for their people.
We lost you there for just a
You
few
there,
seconds
Tom?
there. Yeah, we lost you for just a few
Oh,
seconds. So you were saying that you were
okay.
having some friends that were really
Um,
hurting in the Keys.
oh yeah, and the Keys. I mean, really all over the state altogether. I mean, the travel restrictions or the travel slowdown has hurt guides all over the state. And that's why we started that Captain's Relief Fund. I started that off expecting it to be something small, and now we're generating almost $30,000 a week to give to
Well,
guides
why
in
don't
need.
tell me about that? How did you think about starting that? Obviously, the guides drive your business, right? I mean, without the guides, I mean, you're going to sell a lot of cast nets to individuals, but you're going to sell most of your cast nets to guides or someone that is super avid, right? So the guides
Absolutely.
drive your business. So you have an eye on the guides, and then you start thinking, what can I do to help this
Yep.
situation?
Yeah, the guides definitely have made Barracuda tackle where we are. I mean, we got to a big place in the cast net world very quickly, and the guides have kind of brought us there. So, guides use our nets. Guides talk about our nets. Fishing guides are some of the biggest influencers in the fishing community, and because the fishing community is somewhat spread out geographically, as far as we're on the water, we don't see each other. We're not next to each other. That social media aspect of it is what drives a lot of people to understand what's up and coming fishing products, what's better and what's not. So the guides have really gotten behind us since the beginning. And when I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, and I heard they had trouble putting food on the table,
Yeah.
I wanted to do something about that. So we dedicated a portion of our sales for the month of April to just give to guides. Any guide could come up to our website and just sign up, put their name, address, email address. We checked it, verified, made to make sure they were full time guides, um, and then we would give them a portion of our sales for the month. I want to do something more than that. So we started to look at the Captain's Relief Fund. I went to a couple of our guides. Some of them I'm humbled they'd even take my phone calls. Pretty much all of them. But Robert Trossett in Key West came on, Chris Trossett. I mean, the list is long. Mike Goodwine, Ryan Harrington. We had just a ton of guides stepped up to it. And basically, they're raffling off for $10 a ticket, as many tickets as you want to buy. They're raffling off a trip. And we've had people win. We had a person win a trip with Chris Rossett with $20 in raffle tickets. We had a great trip.
Wow.
So that's a pretty expensive trip. But yeah, so they come to the website, they buy for that guide, and then we draw a winner for each and every guide. And we did $26,750 our first week,
Right on.
which is pretty cool. And we were able to take that money, split it up evenly, and give it to every guide who has signed up for some kind of guide relief program for our guide relief program on our website.
How many guides did you have sign up so far?
Over 100.
Really?
The first week round of checks, because of our contribution and because of like Darcy had a 2 week raffle where she raised almost $9,000 herself. Darcy Arahill for Darcizzle.
Mm-hmm.
So add all that together, we were able to cut every guide a check for somewhere around $370, I believe.
Wow.
Which it'll put food on the table. It's not a ton of money, but it was able to give them something where they had a hard time having income for that month.
Here's a guy right here. T.H. Mahoney says he won a trip with Bear. So
that's a good trip. I love Bear. I was actually down fishing with Bear just last week. I'm still feeling the effects of sail fishing in 5 to 6 foot seas, but yeah, you guys had some weather down there last week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really a great thing that you're doing. We're going to donate a trip as well to make sure that we don't have any scheduling. What I never want to try to attempt to do something good and then have it backfire by someone not being able to schedule the schedules don't meet up. And in the past that's happened to where it's disappointing for somebody that buys a trip and then the schedules just never meet up, and our schedules are difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to set give a trip away with Saltwater Experience Charters, and that way the schedule is way more flexible than our own schedule. And if we can go, we'll jump on the boat and go as well. But no guarantees.
Great. I still gotta get a boat and go fishing with you, Tom.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna definitely do that. So what do you think? Like, do you have any kind of a forecast about how many more guides are going to need help? I mean, are you seeing more guides sign up for this every single day, or are there some areas that in your opinion you've got kind of a wider net, no pun intended, than just a
14 foot.
sole focus on the Florida Keys, which obviously that's a problem. I mean that
Yep.
the Florida Keys is a problem because it is literally closed. So if you don't have local
Yep.
clients, you're pretty much out of
No.
luck. And
Yes, sir.
but what about the rest of the state? What about outside of the state? What about South
Well, it's
Carolina,
it's
North
it's
Carolina?
open. It's open to everybody. I mean, honestly, this is something we've done. We've opened it up to anybody. I know yesterday we mailed checks to Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, Texas. So we've had pretty much that whole coastal region. Anyway, it looks like to me anywhere that Barracuda's nets are, which is that whole coastal area where everybody uses cast nets, people are aware of what we're doing. I'd like to get the message out more. I'd like to raise more money. I'm trying right now to actually do some. We've had to form a 501c3 and a number of different things to try and get this going. But I'm trying to raise as much as possible to take care of as much as we can for these guys because these guys are missing $20,000 months. I mean, it's
Right.
not a drop in the bucket. I mean, if it's only $400 per guide per week, it's not much. It's not going to probably put a dent in that, but at least it does something.
Man,
Um,
when as a fishing guide, that can be the difference between keeping your head above water and not.
Yep. So we're trying. We're going to try and I'm going to try and take. We've had to form a 501c3 on this. So I'm actually going to try and take it into a constant thing where we're constantly generating some kind of revenue and dropping it in there. Trying to form a board right now, people who could decide where that money goes. So it'll be more than just Corona. Hopefully down the road, it'll turn into something for
Mm.
red tide outbreaks and hurricanes. When guys are hurt, the board can release money out to it.
Right.
And I've got some creative ways to generate some money to put in there. So I think we're gonna keep this thing going in the future and have it there, maybe more at the ready than kind of catch up from behind.
Well, that's great. I mean,
Yeah, and I'm
congratulations.
trying to thank you. I'm trying to get other companies involved. And other companies are looking at getting involved, and we're looking at donating a portion of all of our sales every year to it and make it a national thing. And just keep it always out there because a lot of guys don't have anything to fall back on. It's a sport we do because we love. It's a business you're in because you love it. And sometimes it doesn't afford you the opportunities really to get this to have that money in the bank when you need it.
Right.
Especially times like this when February hits and then March are shut down. I mean, that was the perfect storm for these guys.
Man, talk
And it's for
about
everybody. I mean, hospitality workers, everybody's feeling it. But I mean, for our business, guides are our backbone. So we got to do
for
something for 'em.
fishing guides. I mean, gosh, there are so many guides that talk about the perfect storm and the worst possible time of the year for this to happen. I mean, I was explaining it to somebody, and a lot of people that are listening right now, they know this inside and out. But other people listen to this podcast and they don't really know the fishing business as well as people that are entrenched in it. But for let's say the Florida Keys and really most of South Florida, the months of March, April, May, June,
That's it.
that is where I mean people will work every single day. And
Running 2 trips a day. I mean, I
Right.
talked to some guys who run 3.
right,
Try and run
3 trips a
short
day
so they can do it.
for
Yeah.
for that short period of time. And some people, when things are good, a lot of guides could choose like, do I want to work 3 trips a day for 4 months and then take the rest of the year off, or take the summer off, or go spend some time in Montana or Idaho or Wyoming, or do something different in the summertime? Would I rather just put all my focus on that time and then not as much on the rest of the year? And some people do. And
Yep.
those people are the ones that are really suffering because even if this clears up, they're not getting the business that they would normally have this time of the year. 3 trips a day for 90 days in a row.
It's crazy.
But they also haven't developed the business for July and August and September because they're
Yep.
usually not even in town. And
Yeah.
man, that's a bad situation because there's only so many trips going around, even on good years. And once the kids go back to school, the tourism really changes, and you don't
Yep.
have as many people. So you might be fishing on the weekends, but it's hard to sometimes it's hard to get trips during the week. And so if you have to develop that business over many years so that you have these people calling, and you have lots of people calling for March, April trips, and you're like, well, I don't have any days. They say, well, I really want to go fishing with you. And
Yeah.
then you have to take that person and say, okay, let me spend some time communicating with this person so that I can explain to you that if you really want to fish with me, there are other times of the year that you can do that. Maybe in September. Let me tell you
Yep.
about the fishing in September, and you basically have to
get that
sell
fall.
them on that, right?
Yep.
And then they come, and then that becomes their trip. September.
Yep.
All right, great. I love it. But that takes many years to develop that. So
It
that's
does.
a tough thing right now.
And then you have the other option there, the other side of it where you can't move the fish around, right? So for us, it's tarpon season right now, and tarpon season is huge here in Tampa Bay. And the guides get more money for their trips. They're running more trips. They're doing it back to back, and those tarpon leave, and they're not going to wait for
Right.
coronavirus to come around or not come around.
No.
They're not going to wait for, it's when those fish are gone, they're gone. And I mean, catching a tarpon is to a lot of people is a one time in a lifetime event. It's not something that happens often. It's not something they have the option to do year round. So it can't move the fish around. You can't move the dates around. It's definitely the weather. You can't change the weather. So it's definitely hard on everybody. And you're right. If you didn't develop your business, if you're a young guide and you haven't developed that business yet for the summertime, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah. But I do believe that when things open up, I believe the economy is going to come roaring back. And I believe that people are really tired of spending a lot of time in their house, and they're going to be ready to go do something different. And that includes traveling and fishing, and gas is super cheap. And so
yeah, I mean,
people
it's
might
amazing.
get in the car
Except for
and
diesel.
go. Right.
Bad time to buy a diesel truck.
Well,
my truck is a diesel, and I'm like, oh,
you know
270 a gallon still.
I always say that I'm responsible for that, because for many years I debated on going to a diesel truck, and the diesel was just so cheap. And about the year I bought my first diesel truck,
Yep.
it went up and it never came back down. And I was like, man, I bought a truck to get cheaper fuel, and it never worked. So sorry about that. I messed that up for everybody, I think.
No, it's funny. 'Cause I got the new Ford F-150 came out with a diesel, a little 6-cylinder. I still get like 30 miles to the gallon on it. So I'll pay $264. It's like, I fill my tank up. I got 700 miles still empty. It's great. Can't complain.
They do tow well. I mean, man, diesel truck
it's a great truck.
tows great.
So much better. Yeah. I drive with the new boat we have coming. I've always drug boats all around the state all the time. So it's nice to have that extra torque in there.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
So let's get back to when you decided to start Barracuda. You were in the tech business. Did you just get tired
I was in
of
the
that?
tech industry. I'd been in the tech industry ever since I came out of the Army, and I was over it. I was bored with it. I'm really good at tech, but I don't like it. I've never been that guy who will sit there and set up gaming systems and play video games. I don't do any of that. So I don't, not a big Star Wars fan, so it doesn't really fit in.
Well, what'd you do in the Army?
I was in the Army for about 5 years. I was all over the place.
Right on. Did you learn some of the tech skills there, or did you already have them?
No, when I came out of the Army, I went to college, and then when I came home, I was college at University of Texas. I came home back to Florida, and I went to a tech school, and I just took to it really well and understood it. And for some reason, my brain works in that direction. So I got into it and got heavy into it, and ended up in the medical field. And I had a great run and a great life with that.
Nice.
Yep. But then I was bored with it. I was done with it. I fished my whole life. I started throwing a cast net when I was 7 years old. And I was looking for a cast net, trying to find something that was great. I had a custom made one that was made by a guy here in St. Pete who had died. It started ripping up and falling apart, and started looking at new nets. And I bought every premium net out there, every single one of them. Every single one of them I didn't really appreciate for one reason or another. So I started making my own. I learned how to actually make cast nets, sew cast nets, and I started putting nets together and tried different things, this and that, and came up with a design after 127 handmade nets that I thought was perfect. And a couple of guys I gave it to thought it was perfect. And we ended up having to go find manufacturing, put that together, and Barracuda was born. And it was kind of, honestly, I almost gave up on it halfway in between and kind of took a bet. Somebody bet me I couldn't make it successful. Once you bet me on anything, I'm going to go heads down and just kill it.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. What was the reason that you almost gave up on it?
It's a lot of work. Manufacturing is tough. Manufacturing cast nets is a very tough business. There are no monofilament mesh machines here in the United States, so everything has to be made overseas. I don't care if anybody says it's an American-made net. It may be assembled somewhat here in the U.S., but it's coming from China.
Yeah.
And when you go to China, there's a lot of the companies who manufacture them don't really care. They're just pumping them out. They have these huge factories where they're just pumping out nets. There's no consistency. I was lucky enough to find a 4th-generation net maker over in the Qingdao province of China, and they really do great work with us. I mean, I talk to my guy over there every other day. We're always on production things. It's pretty cool. But I fought the Made in America thing. I wanted to make everything right here in the U.S. And you cannot make nets here in the U.S. Even there's some big net makers on the East Coast, and they're buying all their mesh from China, buying all their pieces from China, and then they're just assembling it. And a lot of them are using illegal labor to do it. So it's kind of
so let me ask you this: with all that information that you just gave me, What's the difference in time between hand making a net yourself and a machine making a net?
So you cannot make mesh under 1 inch out of monofilament by hand. You can't do it. Your fingers will be bleeding. It'll be awful. It's torture. It really is. So all the mesh itself, even though our nets are handmade, but all the mesh comes off a machine. It's the only way you can make monofilament mesh. Down to, if you were trying to make a 3/16 inch, what you guys call mahua nets down there,
Yeah.
if you were trying to make that by hand, you'd stop at 5 feet. You get a 5 foot mahua net, that'd be it. It's just too many knots. It's too much work. So all the mesh has to be made by hand. So we make it in basically sheets like cloth. Then we cut it into a pattern, and then we sew those patterns together. If you look at most nets today, most of your premium mid-level nets are panel nets, which means there's like 6 panels, maybe less, maybe more sewn together. You could also make a conically sewn net. There's a couple manufacturers out there who still make them. They end up with a nice witch's hat in them. There's no panels. They actually sew the whole mesh all the way around. But to make those panel nets, everything's made by hand after the mesh comes off the machine.
Gotcha.
But it's even if you take it to that point and make them here in the U.S., getting the labor at a rate that can actually make the net affordable is almost impossible. You're talking 12 to 14 hours to make one net. So times that by the end, the skilled labor you're going to need is about $18 an hour. Do the math on that. Your labor rate's more than a typical net would be coming out of China.
So speaking of coming out of China, how does the coronavirus affect that net making business in China?
I've seen some manufacturers say that they're out of stock because of China and manufacturing. I have not experienced a single slowdown on my manufacturing capabilities. We have experienced a shipping slowdown, but not a manufacturing slowdown. Our last shipment that was coming in actually had supplies that were needed for New York on the boat, and they were needed immediately. So they actually rerouted the ship from Tampa all the way around us to New York, unloaded the whole entire boat, brought it back, causing a 5-week delay. But I haven't experienced anything. I've heard people say it, but I've nothing.
Okay.
China, it seems like, from what I gathered from talking to my people over there, it seems like they were hit mainly in the center of the country. Where our nets are made is right on the coast, so it's I don't think they had much of a case of it over there at all. But it's definitely an interesting. It was definitely an interesting learning process to figure out how to manufacture in China and everything and the intricacies of it.
So did you have to go there a lot to do that?
Once. All it took was one time.
One time, and
that's all it took. And
so you can do it in one time because you know enough about making nets that you can judge almost immediately what you're seeing.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, when we're pushing really hard right now to bring all of our manufacturing back to the U.S., we have a new line of reels coming out. We have our hook extractor that just came out. We're trying to move everything to the U.S. because obviously we want everything to be made here. But the nets are still going to be. We're going to try and get them here in 2 years, but it's difficult.
So let's talk about the hook extractor because that is amazing. Like I love those things.
Yeah, it's great. There was one that was made years ago by a company that went out of business.
I know. That's when I was wondering, like, what happened? Did the patent run out, or?
Well, that's part of it. The company was making years ago. They went out of business, and he had a patent on the way it worked. So the patent ran out in January. And we were like, okay, we're going to pick it up. But he was just suing people. Anybody who tried to actually make the hook extractor, he would just sue you real quick. I don't think he gathered any damages from what I read because he was hiding his patent and the judges would kind of throw it out, but they'd say he can't make it. But we started making it. I wanted to make it here in the U.S. I wanted to be our first U.S. product. Actually, Dylan Hubbard from Hubbard's Marina called me up and said, hey, will you make this? And we started work on it. And it's robust. It's durable. It's, We've had a couple issues in the first early production. That's all changed. Now they're super thick. I mean, you can't bend them. You can't break them. They're gonna last a lifetime.
Right.
And they're made out of 304 stainless, where, typically every other extractor I've seen out there comes out of China, and China metals. One of those things you could order something in 304. It might be close to 304. You might end up getting 301.
So wait, I don't know what that means. 304, 301. What?
Okay, sorry.
That quality of metal.
I deal in metal all day long right now. You want to talk about titanium? I will bore you to death with the new titanium reels we have coming out. So there's different grades of stainless steel. Not everything is actually not going to rust. 304 is where you get to the point where it will not rust. 301, you may get some surface rust. 316 is your highest level of pretty much rust resistance.
Okay.
What that means in stainless steels is that there's no iron in it, so it's going to become soft, and it's going to be softer. Like you get to 304, 316, sometimes it feels like Play-Doh. It's kind of cool. So we use 304 stainless, which is where the first level where it's not going to rust at all.
Okay.
And we make them here in the U.S., which is a big thing because when you start getting stuff out of China, like I can go to China and say I want everything made out of 304. I may get half my order will be 304, the other half of it maybe in the 400s where it's actually going to rust out on you. So that's another difference in and we control being in the U.S. One of the big differences is we control the quality of everything.
So you can make that in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's made in the U.S. right now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we have a factory. We're right here in St. Pete. Our reels, the new reels we have coming out are all made here in St. Pete.
Okay.
And those are solid titanium.
So that hook extractor, I have, I don't know, a half dozen of those things that I covet. Like, I will not leave them with Rich. Rich is really bad at, I mean, he is really bad. It's like, I call it the black hole. If you leave something on his boat, you never see it again. So anybody that goes with him, don't leave anything on the boat because here's a little secret. You'll never see it again. So I do not leave those on the boat. I take them in a little, I bring a little bag. I've got my hook extractors in there. They go with me wherever I go because they become very, very difficult to get. And the whole key was the end of it, like the angle of how the thing was. And there were many other brands on the market that had these things, but they didn't work. They were nothing but
hold up.
Yeah. Well, but they also didn't take the hook out. Like you could just grab it and hold on to it and the fish, turns and the hook would come out, but not like what you have like that. The way that this is and the way that you pull the trigger and the hook comes out, it's
flips it backwards and pops out.
It's genius, man. And do you have any idea on making longer ones? Like how long are you going to make?
So we have an 8.5 inch model, which is people say it's when they first see it, they say it's too short, but for inshore fishing, I love it. It's the best little extractor ever. That's why we made it that length is I was using it and we tried different lengths and that 8.5 was just perfect. Then we have what we call the offshore model, which is 13.5 inches.
Okay.
But to keep it, I mean, we had a 7-foot sandbar shark on 2 months ago out of Boca Grande, with a 9-knot hook in its mouth, and it literally flipped it right out.
Yeah.
It was the craziest thing.
Yeah. I would even vote for a longer one, because I mean, like if you're on a big offshore boat, I mean, you got to reach down to the water. I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but you can,
I'm with you on that.
Not only are you staying away from the sharks and the kingfish and stuff like that on the dangerous parts of them, but you're also able to reach them without pulling them out of the water at all. So it might be too long for some applications, but man,
you're right. And that is some. I mean, I was definitely thinking about it because I'm primarily inshore fisherman my whole life. I've been fishing snook, redfish, trout. Mm-hmm. Actually saw bonefish tailing for the first time when I was in the Keys 2 weeks ago. It was pretty cool.
But now I want to go there right now.
It was crazy. It was we were going down from Sugarloaf to Key West. I look over and I see all this tailing and Bear was in the truck next to me. I'm like, Bear, what is that? He's like, that's bonefish. I was like, really? Right there? Like we're driving down US 1 and there's bonefish tailing right as the sun's cracking. It was it's one of those moments you're like, give me one of those skinny water skiffs and a fly rod. I got to try this.
That's where the FOMO comes out. You start thinking about pulling over at that boat ramp, at the closest boat ramp, and running over there because it's happening, or it might be happening where you're going. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, we ran offshore. We got permit that day. Key West permit's been a bucket list fish of mine, so that was definitely fun.
Yeah. But I filmed a TV show like that one time. We were going to go and we were going to fish for bonefish, and it was a show called, what was that called? It's called In Search of Flywater, I think. And it was, they shot it with film, and which was hard because we shot, with videotape, you can shoot anything. With film, you have to pick and choose what you want to, because it's super expensive. So anyway, this guy was having kind of a hard time catching anything. And we had spent the day before trying to catch a bonefish on fly, and it was not happening, man. It was not going to happen. So we were driving up, and I look off to the side right there by Spanish Harbor Bridge, and the tarpon are rolling right there. And I just like, This is the show. This is the show. We're going to do this show today. And it worked out. It worked out. But, you got to keep your eyes open on the road there.
You do. It's amazing what you can find, out there. It's, you may be going fishing for one species one day and go a completely different direction. I mean, I know I would stop the car for tarpon for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
I haven't landed a tarpon yet this year, and the tarpon have been here for a couple of weeks. I'm getting the itch right now. Yeah. I'm waiting on a boat to be built. So my old boat's sold, and I'm waiting on one to come out of production here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's pretty exciting.
Right on.
So,
That's always
yeah,
a nice time to get
it's
a
my
new
first
boat.
ever custom built boat. It's exciting. I'll tell you what. It's yeah, putting twin Mercuries on there. It's gonna be an amazing boat. So can't wait to get it.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yep.
So
Yep.
back to getting your cast net company
Squirrel.
started. So you go over
Um,
there and you figure out your manufacturing. What is it that you decide I'm going to do this differently that gives you the idea that you're going to, I mean, there are a lot of cast nets, right?
There's a lot of cast nets. If you ever dive with a cast on the way it sinks, it's going to make you rethink everything, because everybody thinks they throw a cast net, they hit a pancake, it sinks like that, and they grab bait. Cast nets kind of form a bird cage. Some of them will form a teepee in the water as soon as they hit the water. So we wanted to try and change the way we did that. So, the first thing we did, we obviously, if you start at the top of our net, we give you a 30-foot hand line. It's a big cushy hand line. It's not going to cut into your wrist too much. We do a 4-section horn on there, which keeps the braille lines from tangling up in the lead line at the bottom. The mess was really hard. We actually went through a million different types of monofilament trying to figure out what kind of mono to use. We all know monofilament. People will argue different parts of it, but if you take mono and you throw it in the water, it floats. If you break the surface tension, it will still float. Sometimes it'll be neutrally buoyant. But you can increase the density of monofilament. So we were able to do that to make a monofilament that is somewhat negatively buoyant, which makes the net sink better. We put more mesh in our nets so they open up more flat. There's also a secret thing we do to them. I've never told anybody. If you look at our net, you can figure it out. But you have to look at it next to another net and you go, oh, I finally see it. It makes the net form a bird cage in the water. So the top almost goes flat, the sides collapse down a little bit, and it sinks that way. And it was really simple the way we did it. And then one thing we really do is we focus on making heavy nets, because you have to make a heavy net for the market. We really focus on making lighter nets. When you pull up on a school of threadies out in the water and they're up high and you throw a net on them and you never catch one of those threadies, one of the big thready
that's
pods.
happened to you too, huh?
It happens to everybody, right? You're
Right.
like, oh, my net doesn't sink fast enough. It's actually the opposite of that. Your net doesn't sink slow enough. Because no matter what happens when you throw that net, they're going to scatter. But if you have a lighter net that takes longer to sink, the bait will come back underneath and you'll hammer it. I was talking to one of our captains last night. I was over at his house, and he was out there with one of our 14-foot flats nets, which is super light, 0.8 pound per foot. And then everybody's trying to catch these threadies. Nobody could get them. He threw the light net and just hammered them. So we're trying to adjust what people think about cast nets. The heavier a cast net is, the faster it'll sink. That's a true statement. But it also changes the attitude of the net in the water. Makes the net teepee up on you, not birdcage up. And it makes it close up faster.
It certainly makes it harder to throw.
Yep. So we tried all sorts of different models. There's been people who have come out with different nets out there. We've worked on one that had a soft lead line on it, so the lead was covered. Can't get it to sink right no matter what you do. You can try left and right, it won't sink properly in deep water. You can watch it, dive with your nets, watch what they do. So the traditional open exposed lead is going to sink faster, it sinks better. But we have tried some other innovations, and it seems like I think we have the perfect cast net out there for us and what we do.
Yeah.
A lot of people love our nets, and we've had rave reviews about them. So it's definitely what I think is the best net out there. But yeah. We have different weights and everything else. It's what's really funny to me is everybody always thinks heavier, and really you don't want heavier. Our 1.25 pound per foot net is probably the most versatile, and it'll work perfectly on deep water baits. You just have to know how to throw it.
And what when you say you have to know how to throw it, what do you mean?
So when you throw a net, you throw a deep net, it's obviously going to sink right there. The current's not going to affect it. If you're throwing a lighter net, your net's going to move as it goes down the water column. So if you're looking at baits that are maybe 20 feet down and the current's going from right to left, you're going to want to throw a little bit far right to let it go down to where those baits are to the left and let it sink slowly. But it's going to go down there. It's going to be more open. It's going to be more caged off, and it's going to catch you more baits overall.
Gotcha.
And honestly, throwing a lighter net is so much easier, right?
Right.
I love our 0.8 pound per foot net. You give me a 1.6 pound per foot net, I don't love it.
What about mullet nets? Because that's where I've had a really hard time, where the net is so heavy because the mullet are super fast, and you get it. But like I went fishing one time with Ryan Nitz, and I had this net. It was so heavy, and I could open it maybe a dozen times, and then it's like.
And you're in shape.
I'm in shape, and I'm wondering what other people do. It's like, man, I need to work on my technique. Obviously, I could have better technique, but the thing was so freaking heavy that he was like, well, let me take a swipe at it. He could barely lift it up. right? It was
Yep.
just way too heavy. I don't even know who would be throwing that thing. What about mullet nets? How do you
Well,
pick the
as your
weight on a
mesh
mullet net?
expands, as your mesh expands, so meaning as your mesh gets
Yes.
bigger, right? So
Right.
like 3/16 is the smallest mesh we make. We make all the way up to inch and a half. As your mesh expands, you can put more lead on it, and it'll sink appropriately for that size. And that's
Mm.
what people don't realize. So a mullet net, you can throw 30 pounds of lead on there, and it's going to stay open. It's going to hammer your mullet for you.
Right.
It'll wear you out. I know that you guys down there consider mullet net a 3/4 inch mesh, right?
Hmm.
Up here, we consider it bigger.
Well, you can see
I know
people
Rich
throwing a 1 inch. I mean, they'll
Can
throw,
you?
yeah, because the mullet are
Yeah.
good size. A lot of places that you're catching them, they're really good size. They're not going to go through a 1 inch. But the other thing that's happening is that the wider mesh, the faster the net's going to sink, regardless of how
And the
much.
more lead you can put on it without closing it up too fast on itself.
Right, because it's
So
like an umbrella. Like it, I mean,
yep,
if you have an umbrella that has no holes in it, it's going to be really hard to pull that thing down. And if you have an
yep,
umbrella that is just like made out of fishnet or whatever, it's going to be easier. And the bigger those holes are, the faster that's going to sink,
and it's
even
gonna
with the
sink.
same amount of lead, right?
Lead. Yep,
So,
no matter what.
I'm always looking for
Yep,
like one that's light enough that I can open it as many times as I need to throw it in order to catch the
yep,
bait, which a lot of times is a lot, like,
yep,
it's
yeah.
not every day you just go out there and throw
Dumb is the secret.
one time and you get what you need. So you're making nets for everything from mahua and maybe even smaller nets than that, all the way up to a big
Mullet.
mullet net. So
Yep.
you have a company that is dealing with all types of fishermen, good fishermen, bad fishermen, people that have never thrown a net, people that are thinking about throwing a net, kids, adults,
Yep,
strong people, weak people.
yep.
How do you, I mean, certainly in trying to sell nets, you have come up with with like a way that you can tell people what net it is that they need. How do you cut through all the BS
It,
and make it very simple for someone to know what net they need?
we have a video up on YouTube, and it's really funny you bring that up because we're actually remaking it. We were supposed to remake it yesterday. We have a video up on YouTube on how to select the nets, and selecting nets is pretty hard. We are going to start running what's called Barracuda Bait University down here in St. Pete here pretty soon. People can come and learn everything they want to know about cast nets, how to throw them, how to catch bait, how to find bait, every piece of it. But our video on how to select nets is actually pretty good, pretty detailed. Oh, something just happened.
I
There you
put
go.
up I put up some of those shots that you
Yep,
sent me last night. I forgot about those, but yeah,
yep.
you can do pictures behind all
That's
this stuff.
awesome.
So I'll
That's cool. So yeah, we've done a lot of training. We travel around, do a lot of training. I mean, a couple days ago, somebody posted on Facebook that they bought one of my nets and they were trying to learn how to throw it. I realized he lived 10 minutes away from me, so I drove over there and taught him how to throw a net. But we show up at a lot of tournaments. We show up at all over. We've done a lot of stuff from Key West all the way up to the Panhandle. We've done stuff on the East Coast. We've done, we've been in North Carolina, South Carolina, teaching people how to throw nets, because that's a big thing, learning how to throw a net. I mean, my neighbor taught me when I was 7, and I'll never forget it.
when you learned how
Um,
to throw a net when you were 7 years old, what technique did your neighbor show you how to do? Because that, I mean, I find that kind of interesting because you're when you're teaching a kid, like what size do you teach the kid to throw? Because it can be a disaster. If you give them too heavy or
oh
too
yeah,
big of a net, they're never
yep,
going to be able to throw it. But if you teach them the right technique, a small, very weak person can throw a pretty large net. So I'm just wondering what what was the technique you learned?
he taught me on a 6 foot. I don't remember the mesh size. It was probably 3/8. And he taught me the put it in your mouth, hold it with 2 hands, break it in half, and throw it method. Or
Mm.
actually, no, hold it in one hand, hold it open with your right, and just throw it. And for a 6 footer, that works perfectly. But anytime you get bigger than 6 feet, you typically want to I go to a triple load. Some people break the net in half and just throw it that way still. I like the triple load because it opens every time. It's a consistent pancake. There's nothing that really messes it up. It gives you the chance to go through your net when you're loading it to make sure there's no tangles. That was actually the method I use now. Was taught to me by Will Osborne, who's from Cortez, Florida. He's a great captain down there. He's actually on a raffle right now. Well, I mean, I've done some amazing fishing with Will.
Mhm.
But he's multi-generational. His throw has been handed down from his granddad, I think, and his dad. And to me, it's just the easiest throw out there. And a lot of people throw it similar ways, but Will has some secrets to his throw that work great. And if you look up, I think we have Bait University Part 1 still online, which is Will teaching you how to throw a net with Ashley, his girlfriend. Great people.
Okay. So for people that don't know exactly what you're talking about with a triple load or a double load, kind of explain that real quick.
You take the net, basically, you get it, you roll your line up, you take the net, you fold it in half or however you're going to put it in your left hand, and then you take what's hanging down, you break that into 3 parts, and you little bit less than 3 part, throw a little bit over your shoulder. You break the rest of the net in half, and throw it that way. I mean, there's a video on it. I could try and give you a lesson right now. I've got a net over there, but
Do it, man.
in my backyard.
We won't have good audio, but
No,
maybe right at the end you can throw it at the end of the deal. But that's cool. So what about size of mesh, weight? How do you tell somebody like which one of your nets to
Well, it
pick?
depends on where they're fishing.
Right.
If they're fishing like the flats, I always tell people our flats net is perfect for shallow water. It's got longer leads on it, doesn't have the ball lead on it. It's not going to pull a bunch of grass up on your boat. It's not going to get your boat dirty. It's all you need to sink in 4 feet of water. Obviously, there are some special uses for it. Like I said, when you're catching those big threadies and they're on the surface and you want to try and get them, it works amazing for that. But that's generally a 5 foot or less depth net. There is no perfect net. That's an issue everybody thinks. So what is the one net I can buy that's going to catch me bait year round? Just like fish, everything changes in the water. Just like, your big fish that you're going after to catch, everything changes seasonally. So one time a year, your white baits or pilchards, as you guys call them in the Keys, we call them white bait, pilchard. I think scaled sardines are another name for them. They're going to get smaller and they're going to get bigger. And if you are throwing on small baits and you have a 3/8 inch mesh net, which is what people typically love to use, you're going to get what's called a Christmas tree. All your bait's going to be gilled up in your net, and you're going to be frustrated. So I always say, if white bait is your primary goal, you want a 1/4 inch net, and you want a 3/8 inch net, because certain times of year that bait's going to get bigger. You're going to want to, and the mahua is going to mix in with it, or glass minnows. And when that happens, you're going to want that big enough for the mahua to get out, but the white bait to stay in. I was actually, when we were throwing down on the Marquesas 2 weeks ago, we were experiencing that. All we had was a 1/4 inch net, so the mahua was getting stuck in it, and the white bait, we were getting the white bait, but our net looked like trash afterwards with mahua stuck in it. So there's no perfect size net. If white bait's your thing, I say buy a 1/4 inch and buy a 3/8 inch. Buy whatever length you can throw. I prefer to throw 12-foot nets. I say if you're a fisherman, you're serious about it, don't get anything smaller than a 10-foot net, unless you have a disability that holds you back from throwing that size net. There's no reason to, and a triple load will open up a 10-foot every time. And the weights vary based on where you're going to be throwing. I think you guys down in the Keys, one of the favorite places of the guys who I fish with down there is the Marquesas to catch bait.
Yep. That's
3-4 feet of water. You don't need anything heavier than 1.25. You're not going to be throwing deeper than that. So there's a whole formula that goes into net selection. But if you think you can have one net on your boat and get it done every time with that, it's not going to happen. It's just like fishing rods and reels. If you walk inside my house over here and you look in the corner, you're going to see a rod rack with 1,000 rods and reels in it. Some of them have different applications. Some of them I'm at the tackle store and I'm just like, oh, that looks nice. I want to try that out.
Right.
And I've got everything from G. Loomis to St. Croix. I've tried every rod out there. I'm kind of a gear junkie when it comes to that. But yeah, there's a different application for every net. Same as a rod and a reel. You don't buy a grouper stick and go trout fishing.
Right. I got it. What about when you do get the Christmas tree, which is pretty much inevitable? It happens to everybody. Especially when you're kind of not as experienced, and you look and you get excited that there's bait. You actually found some bait, which might be kind of a new thing. Like, oh my God, there's some bait. So you throw on it, and it Christmas trees your whole net, right? Because you don't have enough experience to look there, or maybe the depth of the water is such, and you look. And it's like, those look kind of small, but maybe I'm going to
maybe you can get them, and then all of a sudden you're your Christmas tree.
Right. So you Christmas tree it. There are many techniques to getting this out from a net manufacturer. What's the best way to get all that stuff out without tearing your net up?
If you want to, if you get it, there's no easy way to fix it, right? So the best thing to do is stretch your net out and take the back of your bait well net and just run along the side of it. Yeah. It'll knock off the heads of the fish, and they'll typically fall through. Do it a couple times and you're good to go. Somebody just commented dip net. Bryce Rogers. Yeah, that's it. Take the dip net and just run along the back. If it's your last throw of the day, or if you're just going to go ahead and keep throwing the net with those fish stuck in it, which I've seen people do, when you get back to the dock, if you can find an open place, open your net up and leave it in the parking lot, let the birds pick through it. It works. It's unfortunate, but once it happens, there's no easy way to really get it out of there. Yeah, chum bat works too. Rub your chum bat down the back of it.
It's funny that people have been using a dip net like for forever, and it turns out that that's the best way. Like a dip net without even the net. Like if you got an old dip net that the net has torn up,
Yep.
and you don't have the one thing that I've made a mistake of is you'll have like tie wraps holding on the netting to a dip net, and then
Yeah.
you start doing it with that, and the tie
You're gonna
wraps
rip your
start
neck.
ripping your net. That's not a good thing. You don't
Yep.
want to do that. You're only going to do that a little bit. A pressure washer is something that someone is suggesting too, but man,
I've
you,
seen him actually use the pressure washer on the net, and it does work. I mean, that's Ken Mercer. He's actually a friend of mine. He lives down in he's a captain in Punta Gorda area, Cape Coral. And yeah, I've seen him use the pressure washer. It works.
now, what about
I
in your opinion? You know, I always you always hear people putting their net in fabric softener and taking care of this stuff. Like I've always wondered, does that hurt the
it's
monofilament? Does it make the net weaker so that when you're hitting it with a dip net, then all of a sudden it starts to tear? Like, is that
it's not
because of
that
the fabric softener? What's your opinion on that kind of stuff? Uh-oh, lost you for a second. Okay, there you are.
not that it makes the net weaker. It's not that it makes the net weaker. We don't suggest fabric softener. If you need to clean your net, 5-gallon bucket with water, couple drops of Dawn, sit it in there, let it soak for a couple hours, pull it out, hose it off, and then put it in a shady area to let it dry. Monofilament's plastic. So if you leave plastic out in the sun, it dries out. Anything that'll leach the oil out of the mono is bad, right? So any way you treat plastic when plastic dries out, that's what's going to happen to your mono. Fabric softener, what it does, it doesn't change the properties of the net at all. Everybody goes, oh, it makes my net feel softer. It doesn't make it feel softer. Just like in clothing, it just puts like kind of a slime layer on the outside of it. Makes it feel moist, but it doesn't actually absorb into the mono at all. All you're doing at that point is lubricating your knots, which a cast net is nothing but a series of over 10,000 knots. That's what it is.
10,000 knots in a 10-foot net. There's 10,000 knots
There's
in
more.
that.
I think
More than 10,000. Wow.
21,000 in a 10-foot net.
Yeah, your hands would be bloody and tired if you tied that all by yourself.
Yep. But you're lubricating those knots. So imagine taking, a hook and tying it onto a piece of monofilament or a piece of fluorocarbon and then spraying WD-40 on it,
Right.
or cleanse oil. You wouldn't do that because it's going to loosen up your knot. It's going to give it more slippery. So putting fabric softener on a net is the worst thing you can do to it. From what I understand, that myth was actually started by a cast net manufacturer.
Oh, is that
It
right?
makes the net fall apart a little bit faster.
Oh,
More sales.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't change. It may feel better in your hands the first time you throw it, but as soon as it hits salt water, that slime layer is going to get washed off, of the monofilament is going to feel just like it did before. It's just it's a texture thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, I wouldn't use fabric softener ever. A couple drops of Dawn, not too much. Just let it soak and then bring it out, spray it off, and then let it dry in a shady place. And never lift your ledge off the ground. Lifting your ledge off the ground causes the net to stretch, and now you're throwing. You thought it was a 3/8, it may turn into closer to a half inch.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting about the leads off the ground. I never really thought about that. I don't usually have something tall enough to get it off the ground, but that is interesting because monofilament does stretch just like it. I mean, a net will stretch just like your leader or your fishing line. So that's a good suggestion. And then as far as keeping them in the boat, my feeling is that I keep them in a dive bag because they can be moved around. I didn't even really think about the breathing as much as I don't necessarily have room for a 5-gallon bucket in every hatch, right? But I put them in a dive bag and it keeps them, tangle free, and I can keep 4 or 5 nets in one hatch. They're not getting tangled up. But is it better? Does that matter? Like, is that
no? I mean,
okay?
Honestly, I like putting them in bags. It allows them to dry out more. I clean my nets religiously because I don't like to throw a stinky net in the morning. That's one of the worst things in the morning to me. If I'm going out there to catch bait, I know a lot of guides out there. I've met a lot of guides in this business who never wash their net and just leave it in the hatch. I'll never throw that. I mean, you want to talk about the stinkiest thing you've ever
They
smelled.
are so stinky. I don't know how. I mean, I guess if you really don't get many fish in, Christmas treat in there, then you might be okay. But still, there's so much slime. There's seagrass. That's disgusting.
Yep. And I'm a fisherman, and trust me, I can take the smell of fish. When I come off the boat, I'm as stinky as the rest of them. But in the morning, the first thing I don't want to do is cover myself in a net that smells like dead fish.
Right.
So it's stored in a dive bag, carrying a dive bag. I mean, we give you a nice 5-gallon bucket with a rope handle with every one of our nets. It's a pretty cool bucket made by Bucket Innovations. Actually got a handle on the bottom of it. Great to use on the boat. A lot of guys just take the nets out. They don't even put them in a bag. They just drop them in their hatch. But yeah,
Yeah. So I like it that yours comes in a 5-gallon bucket, because there are the other buckets that it went in there once.
Yep, once. It'll never
by
go back.
by some miracle, somebody folded it up perfectly to get it in there once, and then it's never going back in there. But I do like the shorter one, because in a lot of boats it will fit in a hatch, but it's useless if you can't get the net in there.
And that was when we were building the net, and I feel I built the best net in the business, and I was looking at what I was going to package it in. Everybody hates those 3.5-gallon buckets they come in, because you will never get it back in there. So we were looking for a 5-gallon bucket, and luckily enough, I met a gentleman named Zach, who is, I guess, part owner of the company that makes the buckets, and he said, talk to the guy who's really running the show, talk to him. The price point is a lot more expensive than what I'd be paying for those 3.5-gallon buckets, but I think your packaging should represent your product. And, it's a great bucket. It's big. You can put your net back in there. You're not struggling with it. It's got some innovation to it. It's got patents on it.
What's the innovation of the bucket?
It's just the way the rope handle's attached. It won't come off. The rope handle is obviously nicer than a metal handle. And then that handle they built into the bottom is great, because you can grab that bucket. I was going to try and show you with my hands, but then the phone will move away. You can actually wash down your boat a lot easier with it. It's nice to have that handle on the bottom.
Well, that's what every fisherman needs. You need something that is multi-use. Like you don't want 8 buckets on your boat. This one's perfect for the cast net. This is the one I wash my boat with. I mean, if you have a giant boat, I guess you could have 8 buckets, but typically most boats need 1 or 2 buckets.
One bucket. That's the most you're going to fit on there.
And a bucket is also a safety tool. Like, you start going down, man, nothing is better than a 5-gallon bucket to start getting the water out of the
start
boat.
Bailing it out 5 gallons at a time.
I mean, you got to need, and then for moving bait back and forth, if you got a buddy, they need some bait, you're gonna move over there, you're gonna give them a 5-gallon bucket full of bait. So I think that's awesome. That's one of the things I've liked about your product, is that it comes with a real bucket, like not
not something you're gonna throw away.
Right.
Yeah. And that was part of it. Like I said, I wanted something to represent what's in the bucket. And I think that bucket did it, not some just little tiny squatty bucket you'll never use again.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely fun.
So how much do you listen? How much do you listen to the guides? Do you still get good feedback from the guides with knowing as much as you know about nets and listening to guides enough so that you've built your business now? Are you still hearing new things about how you can innovate a net?
Every day, every single day, guide calls me up and has great input. I haven't fished as much as a guide has in my life. I mean,
I'm certainly not in his area. Like
not in his area. You have to listen to everything. The flats net came out of a guy named Tim Whitfield here in Tampa. He's like, I want a flats net, and I would have never thought, hey, let's make an ultralight net. And Tim, called me up, talked about it. We made it. We tried a couple iterations of it, and we got it perfect. And that's when the flats net came out. I mean, the flats net has more technology than any net.
So like what he's saying is, I'm gonna get up shallower than the center consoles are gonna get, and I'm only gonna throw this in a foot of water. Like, I know where the pilchards are in a foot of water, 2 feet of water. I'm rarely going to throw it over that. So I want a net that's going to be easy to throw, easy to open, not that heavy. And so you're like, okay.
Oh yeah.
We can do it.
And that's important to us. And, even the width and the strength of the line that goes into the net is a big thing. You make the line a little bit wider, you times that by 50,000 square inches that are in the net. It makes the friction harder in the middle. So you try and make your line smaller, but then it needs to be maybe a little bit bigger in certain areas because they're catching bigger baits with it. So it's always a learning process, and we have to listen to what everybody says. I mean, I think that's kind of the backbone of our business. A lot of people will tell you is we listen to our guides. We listen to any input at all. And that's extremely important to us, because I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't know everything about fishing. I know how nets fall in the water. I know how to design nets. I know how to build nets. But I'm not out there in every area. I wish I was.
Well, but you just can't be. Like, every area has something that they're doing that's slightly different than somewhere else. Even up and down the Keys. I mean, the way we catch bait in Key West is different than the way they catch bait in Duck Key,
Marathon,
and Marathon. Yeah. I mean, it is a different deal. And
I've seen it.
Yeah, and that's only 50, 75 miles apart, and the bait catching is different, and the nets are different. The net that Rich uses is different than the net that I have on my boat. And when I go up there, I'm like, oh, I see why you need that net. It's a bigger net. And he's using a wider mesh than I'm using, and I'm able to catch stuff no problem. And I don't Christmas tree anything. But if I go up there, that's not the net to have.
Yeah, I'll never forget, actually, Richard Stancic, up in fishing out of Bud Mary's. Nick Stancic, Richard Stancic, I guess they're up there at Bud Mary's. He called me up in the beginning when I started the company and said, hey, I need a mullet net. So I shipped him a mullet net. He gets this net. He calls me up. He goes, what am I going to use this thing for? I'm like, what do you mean? That's a mullet net. And he's like, no, we need like a 3/4 inch mesh. Up here, we call a mullet net 1.5 inches. Down there, you guys call a mullet net 3/4 inch.
Right.
And I mean, up in the North Carolina, South Carolina areas, they're catching pogies all the time. They want a net that's 1/2 inch or bigger. It's just every single area has a different requirement for sink rate and they're catching it deeper in the Carolinas, for sink rate, for mesh size, for every other aspect of that's different in every single area. And that was a big learning process. That's why we have like 94 SKUs of nets that we have to make.
Are you kidding? 94 SKUs.
94 SKUs of nets we have to make. Because there's just every area is so different, and everybody likes different nets. And I've got guys down.
You've obviously got nets like with 94 SKUs. You've got nets that a retailer's never going to see in the Keys, right? Like you're never going to see them offered there because that's a specialty net for a certain area.
Yep, absolutely. A friend of mine actually texted me this morning, and she's like, "Hey, I'm down in Sarasota. A friend of mine needs a 1/2 inch net. Do any of your retailers down here, or do you have any retailers?" And I said, "Yes, we have retailers, but they don't carry a 1/2 inch mesh. None of them will carry it because that's a very rare net to use in these waters up here on the west coast of Florida. Till you get to the Panhandle area, you'll start using them. But yeah, so there's none that carry it, but we can ship them out. Typically, anywhere in Florida, it's next day shipping on every order we get, unless you're down in the Keys, just because it takes longer to get down there. But
what's the weirdest net you've ever made or had a request for?
Oh, I've had requests for stuff smaller than 3/16, which is amazing to me.
What do they want to catch with it?
Extremely small glass minnows.
Okay.
We do some fun stuff. Like we made a 6-inch cast net. Everybody kept asking me to make a bait well net at one point in time. And I can't figure out any innovation to a dip net. I can't figure it out. There's not much you can do to it. And I always like to innovate. I always like to make things better.
Well, you can make sure they don't have tie wraps on them.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I ended up coming out with a 6-inch cast net and called it the bait well net, where you can just toss it right in your bait well and grab your bait. I thought that was pretty funny. Everybody loves them. If anybody sees them, I have a big box of them at the warehouse. I don't think I've ever charged for one. I just made a couple hundred of them. But everybody wants one. So I'll give them out to kids and whatever. Anytime we do our big events that we do, I think February, we had a big party at the warehouse. No, it was February. No, maybe it was October. I can't remember now. We gave a bunch of them away. But yeah, we have another party coming up in July up here in Madeira Beach. We're calling it Barracuda. We're going to do a free beer and have a bunch of vendors there.
Free beer and vendors, and you get to learn how to throw a cast net?
You get to learn how to throw a cast net. I think I was talking to JL Audio. They're going to be there. We have some boat companies that are going to be coming up and running demos. They get pretty big. The last one was over 1,000 people. I think this one we're going to be over 3,000.
So hold on. When's the date of that?
The same weekend that ICAST was going to be, July 17th and 18th, here in Madeira Beach, Florida.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I think that will be social distancing. I mean, they've already started to open up the state, so I believe it will.
That's interesting because to me, that's like, when you look at everything that we're dealing with right now, restaurants are certainly a kind of an unknown. First of all, are they going to let them open up? Secondly, when they do open up, are people going to have the confidence to go? Then
that's the next thing. The confidence is what I'm scared of.
Right. The next thing is like live events, like music festivals and things like you're talking about, like getting 3,000 people in close proximity. I just don't know. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm very hopeful that it will for you and that event. Yeah. And I one of the things that I like to do is go to Bonnaroo with my daughter, and that got pushed to September, and I still don't know if that's going to happen. Like that's the big unknown. I believe, I think, even football games, like what does that look like for the fall? I hope. I really hope.
I think you're going to see it open up. I think with the new numbers that have coming out, I read a report yesterday, and I normally don't talk about anything unless I verify it's real, because I just don't ever want to put my foot in my mouth. But I read a report yesterday that did a serology test in Miami, and there was 165,000 infected people actually that had the antibodies for coronavirus in their system. And if you look at that and you take the mortality rate, it brings it down to 1/10 of 1 point.
Hmm.
Which I think losing anybody is too much. Don't get me wrong. I have a very good friend of mine. His father just passed away from it. Yeah, I feel for the family. I feel bad for him. Um, but with a mortality rate like that, and I think as those numbers start coming out more and the serology testing is being done, I think people are going to go, "Wow, we probably already had this,
Yeah.
and it's probably not the level we think it is." And I think you're going to see America get back to being America again.
Well, I hope
Um,
so.
I do too.
There's so many things that are so many people that I know that when this all started to happen, I mean, really many of my good friends and a lot of people that I talked to around the Miami Boat Show were sick.
Yep.
And some people were very, very, very sick, including one of my good friends that I spent the whole Miami Boat Show with, um,
Yep.
who will remain nameless. But a lot of people,
Yep.
when they're like, okay, it's a dry cough, it's a fever, you feel terrible, it's like the worst flu you've ever had. And like, oh, I had that back in November. I had that in December. And people
I've heard that
had,
as well as November, December. I was sick as a dog in February.
were you?
All the symptoms, every single one of the symptoms I
You
had
had
in
that dry
February.
cough?
I had a dry cough. I had a fever. I was fatigued, shortness of breath, which I've never had being sick before. I've never had fatigue or shortness of breath. And my ex-wife had actually brought it home. Like when I got my kids from her, they brought it. They had a cough, and I mean that was it. And I was sick as a dog, but nobody was really talking about it that much, and we didn't think about what it was. I would love to have the serology test and have it done. I know my ex-wife just got done yesterday, so I'm excited to see the results.
She did?
But the serology test she
So
got done yesterday.
what did that look like? Like, why did she get that done? Just on a routine physical, or how
We
did
don't
that, how
talk
did
that
that
much.
happen?
She just we don't talk that much. She's obsessed with it. She's obsessed that she had it, and she just kept looking and looking until she found somebody who'd give her the test.
Huh. Okay.
But
That's what
we
I don't
definitely
know
had-
too, is like, there's all this talk of testing, but then it's like, well, when do you get tested? Do you just walk into a place and get tested? I want to know if I've had it, or is this something that happens at your next physical, or is this something like that you get
Yep.
at CVS at the Minute Clinic? I don't know that either, but that seems to be a big part of when things will change as well, is like when people get tested and there's more information out there. I just don't know. I don't know anybody that's had that test like what you said your ex-wife has had.
Yeah, she went down. I mean, they did it in Miami. Yeah.
Somebody says we're losing
Yeah, I
them.
see
This
that.
isn't Fox News. Yeah, you're
All
right.
right, Sark,
No,
so
it's
we talk about
it's definitely not Fox News. But we started talking about this because we were wondering if the 3,000 people at the Castnet Clinic are going to be able to go there. I don't know.
I think they will be. I'm pretty confident that I think we're going to see a big bounce back here in the next month or so. But anyways, that's my opinion. None of us know, right? It's all the big wild card.
Yeah. Who's the best
but,
Castnet instructor you've ever seen?
Oh, if I call somebody out, they are going to get mad. Instructor wise, Zeke, who works at my warehouse, is phenomenal. Mike Goodwine, Will Osborne, they're all great at teaching. Goodwine's great at teaching as well. I mean, Goodwine's probably one of my favorites. He'll get out there and teach everybody. He loves it.
Yeah, he's a big dude though, like he's like when you meet him and shake his hand, you're like, there's no wonder this guy can throw a 14-footer like I see on Instagram. I mean, he's a big, strong guy. It's very interesting to see someone that is not a big, strong person teach somebody how to throw a larger than average net. That's pretty interesting because you can see that like, it's not necessarily, you don't have to look and be like Mike Goodwine to throw that net like that.
Well, that's the crazy. I can throw an 18-foot net. I'm 5'9". I mean, I'm 200 pounds. But it's not, if you let the leads do the work on a net, you'll never work to throw a net. And that's what I try and teach people when I teach people how to throw a net. And everybody's always like, oh, you make it look so effortless. It's because I don't do a lot of work to throw that net. I basically you get the swing right and the leads do all the work for you. If you watch that video for Bait University Part 1 we have up on YouTube, that will teach you how to throw a net to where you're not working to throw it. And Will Osborne taught that. And Will Osborne, like I said, is a multi-generational mullet fisherman out of Cortez. He's a fishing guide. He's great, but he's been fishing mullet his whole life. And they're throwing back to back to back, loading the boat with mullet. I mean, just over and over and over again. So that throw is developed because they don't want to kill themselves all day long when they're doing it.
Right.
And it's really what people don't realize in throwing a net. The load is easy. Learning the load is super simple. It's all in the backswing. It's all in how you arc when you throw it. And that's what really makes it look easy. That's what makes the net open on its own. So, I mean, there is definitely a way to throw a net that won't drain you, won't take it out of you, won't gas you. And we try and teach just that throw. I try and teach everybody that triple load. It just makes it so much easier. But if you see somebody muscling a net, they'll never get the net wide open. If you see somebody trying to muscle that net and get it out there, they'll never open the net properly. You got to let the net do the work.
Right. Yeah. Cool, man. So what do you think the future of Barracuda is?
Well, I'm really excited. Like I said, we have, I'm trying to make a lot of stuff here in the U.S., bring everything back to the U.S. I'm excited about those hook extractors. The reels we have coming out are gorgeous. I mean, for example, like our 4000 series spinning is going to weigh 8.6 ounces. It's super sexy, made out of solid titanium, completely sealed, so saltwater won't affect it. And then even if you broke the seals on it, nothing will ever corrode the way we're doing it. Just solid, buttery reel, to be priced in the same range as like a Stratic $250 reel. It's unheard of. So I'm really excited about the reels we have coming out. It's growing the product line, growing, doing what we love and doing it right and putting all focus on it. That's one thing that, Barracuda has always done. If you do what you love, you'll do a great job at it. And we always we love what we do.
All right. And then as far as your relief program for the guides, how do people learn more about that? How do they participate, bid on these trips? Other guides that want to donate trips, how do they get in touch with you?
So to participate and buy those raffle tickets, go to our website, barracudatackle.com, and you'll notice in the menu bar on the far left side, you'll see where it says Captain's Relief Fund. Click on that link, and it takes you to the page where you can see all the captains who are participating in the relief fund at this point. The raffles are drawn every week. We draw them live, so you know who won. And if a captain wants to get in and put a trip up and wants to do the work to help raffle off those tickets, give me a call. Give me a text message, an email. byoung@barracudatackle.com. You can always find my phone number. I tell everybody my cell phone number is 727-218-0172. And we'll get you set up, get you on there. We appreciate it. It's humbling that we've been able to raise as much money as we have for these guys. I would do this all day long if I. It's a great thing, and these guys really, really need it. There's a lot of people out there right now who need it. Let me say that. I'm not trying to just focus on the guides, but to me, the guides are, for my business, the guides are the essence of what we do.
Right.
And we need to take care of them.
Well, that's who you can help the most. I mean, you have an idea of how to help them a lot more than you have an idea of someone else that may be hurting as well. I mean, this is something that you can take action, and you're actually doing that right now. So you're in the second week of it. You've already raised over $26,000.
Yep.
All right, cool, man. And then
we're we're probably gonna go for a couple more weeks and get as much as we can out there for these guys. I'm trying to put a couple manufacturers have stepped forward and given us some good product to raffle off, and I'm hoping we can get that going here pretty soon, and really get that money going to these guys. So we're trying to pull in all the manufacturers we can right now and pull it all together and get it back out to the guides.
Right on. Well, this was fun on Instagram. I hope everybody enjoyed this on Instagram, because this is kind of something new. If you joined in late or couldn't stay the whole time, or you're just now getting here, this will also be available as a regular podcast. Like I've been putting them out for a while now. It will be on iTunes. It will be on Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, every other place that it has ever been on. So if you missed part of this or whatever, you can catch it over there. We're also putting the video up on YouTube, and it will be on Waypoint as well. So it's pretty much everywhere. And we had a pretty good crowd, held pretty steady there. And so that was great. So let's see if there's if anybody's got a net. Okay, here's a question. How about a Barracuda mask? Are you gonna make a mask? There's your moneymaker right there. Put a coffee filter in it and go for it.
No, if you guys know me, I'd make them and I'd end up just giving them all away. I'd lose money on it, but I couldn't charge money for that. That's protective equipment. I just give it all away.
Yeah, I gotcha. Let's see. I want to ask a question. You're gonna throw. You've made an 18-foot net that you can throw yourself, right? So when I go to throw a bigger net, where I come to a plateau is how much I can hold in my hand.
In your hand.
So how are you when you get to an 18-foot net and you're only 5'9"? I mean, I could see Mike Goodwine holding that net in his hand, but how do you do that? Is there a technique that you're using? Are you only folding the net one time, or How do you do that?
We have there. So I fold my nets differently than everybody else. Everybody wraps their nets up. I take a net, I basically fold it in half, and I grab it right in the middle. Puts less mesh in your hands.
Right.
I
Okay.
can throw an 18.
That's what
What's
I'm.
that?
That's what I'm asking. Like, if you fold it 3 times, an 18-foot net is going to be like this
A
big.
big giant ball of mesh.
Right.
Yeah, we. So when I learned when I was 7 years old, he taught me to just fold the net in half and grab it in the middle.
So
I've been
where's the
doing it my whole
horn?
life.
Where's the horn?
I basically hold the net up and I drop the horn down to where it's about level with the lead line. Not level, but a little bit above it. So it's
Okay.
almost folded in half.
Okay.
And then I grab it in half at waist height at that point.
Okay.
Puts less mesh in your hand. So
Right.
I can throw an 18-foot mono. I did make an 18-foot braid out of solid Power Pro. Nets hand tied. They're tough. But I do make a braid net in 10-foot. We never made an 18-foot, but I wanted an 18-foot that was easy to fit in your hand. And the braids are a lot slicker, a lot smaller. So I did make an 18-foot braid just so I could actually fit it all in my hand.
Okay.
But
So when you throw that, when you just got it folded one time, like you're talking about, and then the horn is down at the end, and you throw that, I'm like, if you have it tripled, then the horn is right next to your hand, and you throw it, and it all takes off like this. Does this not come and hit you in the back of the head ever, or
never? Not once. Nope.
I'll have to try that because some of those that the way that I throw it, I mean, there's just too much mesh in the hand, and then you get forearm fatigue holding that, waiting, and then you can't. That's where you fail. It's not that you don't have the strength to actually throw it. You don't have the strength to hold it anymore. I mean, you stand up on the deck holding that for 45 minutes looking for the bait. That's where it's failing. In the way that I'm throwing the net.
If you fold it in half, it gives you less mesh in your hand. Having the horn hanging down by the leads doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
That horn's going to get pulled. The leads are going to do what the leads are going to do, and it's just going to pull that horn back to the middle of the net.
Gotcha. Okay.
But,
let's see if there's any other quick questions here. When's the next show? I put 5 podcasts out a week. Monday is a short one. Tuesday is a how-to Tuesday. Wednesday has been a full-length interview like this that goes for an hour and a half. Thursday is another during this quarantine, because I'm able to catch up with people and everybody's got plenty of time. So I've been doing 2 a week. So 2 full-length ones. And then Friday is a physical Friday that we talk about staying in shape so that you can go and do all the stuff that you want to do.
In quarantine, it's hard.
Yeah, no kidding. So if you're interested in that, you can look and see Tom Rowland Podcast on iTunes. You can subscribe there. That's the best way. Otherwise, you can just hang around Instagram and see when I'm going to catch up with somebody else like Burton today. But anyway, Burton, thank you very much for your time. It was a very educational podcast. I really liked it, and learned a lot about cast nets as well as I think everyone else did. But man, good. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for what you're doing for the guides. That's really amazing, and I hope everybody will get involved with that. Make some bids. You heard that Chris Trossett or somebody won a trip with Chris Trossett for $20 ticket, right?
Yeah.
So he bought one. Yep. He bought one ticket. He won a trip with Chris Trossett. That's pretty awesome.
That's one of my. I'll tell you, it's one of my favorite trips out there. I've been fishing with Chris a lot, and it's always good.
Well, I had all the Trossets on. If you're interested in the Trossets, you can go back maybe last week or so. I had Chris and RT and RT Junior, and we had some really cool conversations about growing up in a fishing family with a legend as a dad, and how you see one boy going to the fishing and one boy going to the diving. It was a really great podcast. That's a great family. I really like them very much. Have a tremendous amount of respect for them. So good for you, man. Thanks for doing what you're doing for the guide community, and congratulations on a great business. It's neat to see somebody that's so into it making it happen. All right, that's it for today, and I'm gonna cut you out, Burton.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, see ya.
See you later.
Let's see here. I put that down there like that. Remove Barracuda tackle. All right. So that's it. Today's show was brought to you by Waypoint. As always, you can go to Waypoint TV and you can watch all of your favorite outdoor hunting and fishing shows. You can see it anywhere, Samsung Plus TV, and so many other platforms, including Roku, Apple TV, everywhere. You can get it on your phone, your computer, everywhere. So Waypoint TV, that's one of our big sponsors. Hook, right here. Hook is offering a 30% discount on site wide if you use the code SE30. You can go there, you can get some, I would suggest that you use that and go and get some really awesome rain gear. That stuff's very expensive, but we're talking about throwing cast nets. You can get yourself some rubber boots. You can get yourself, a lightweight jacket so that when you're throwing the net in the morning, you can keep the grossness off of you. If you're one of the people that Burton was talking about that doesn't like to wash their net off, you might want a good rain jacket. You can get all that stuff 30% off. Use the code SE30. You can also go to manscaped.com and get 20% off of their Lawnmower 3 as well as any of their other products by using the code TRP, Tom Rowland Podcast. All right, that's it for today. And go visit Barracuda Tackle and check out what they have. They're doing a great job of supporting the guide community, and that is very much appreciated. So please support that, support Burton and what he's doing over there on the guide community. All right, that's it for today. We'll see ya. Thanks.